Hi, and welcome to More Human, More Resources, the HR podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm Vicki Brown, your host and CEO of Vidamaneo Enterprises. As a serial entrepreneur, I understand that having the right expert help has been critical to my success. That's why I'm dedicated to telling you, in plain language, what's going on in the world of HR that might impact your business, and what you need to do about it, with real actionable tips to help you master that list of must-dos and grow your leadership muscle. First things first, the information contained in this podcast is provided for general purposes only and is not to be considered legal advice. Your decision to adopt or not adopt any practice or procedure mentioned in this podcast is solely yours, and we bear no responsibility for the outcome. We urge you to always consult legal counsel and other appropriate licensed professionals. And with that, let's get into the show. You're listening to Season 5, Episode 14. You know, one of the biggest mistakes I see new business owners make is misclassifying their employees. And honestly, I can't blame them. The rules around employee classification are not exactly straightforward, but getting it wrong can cost you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. So today, let's clear up the confusion about exempt and non-exempt employees, because this isn't just about how you pay someone. It's about legal compliance. Here's a scenario I see all the time. A business owner brings on a new executive assistant, pays them a decent salary, and assumes they're exempt from overtime. Well, fast forward 6 months, and they're facing potential wage claims because that very executive assistant should have been classified as non-exempt, entitled to overtime pay for all those extra hours that they worked. Let's set the record straight on this. The default position for all workers in the United States is non-exempt. That means they're all entitled to overtime pay, typically time and a half, for any hours worked beyond 40 in a week, or in California, even 8 in a day. The only way an employee becomes exempt from these overtime requirements is if their position specifically meets the criteria for one of the exemption categories. And this isn't a choice that you get to make. It's not something you and your employee can agree on, and it's certainly not determined by whether you pay someone hourly or give them a salary. The classification is determined by the actual duties of the job and whether they fit into specific categories defined by the Department of Labor. Now, there are 6 main exemption categories: executive, administrative, professional, computer professional, outside sales, and highly compensated employees. So let's break them down one at a time. For an executive exemption, the employee must manage the enterprise or a department, customarily direct the work of at least 2 full-time employees, and have genuine authority to hire, fire, or significantly influence employment decisions. They can't just be called a manager. They have to actually manage people. The administrative exemption is probably the most misunderstood. It's not your administrative assistant. This exemption applies to employees whose primary duty is performing office work directly related to management or general business operations, and who exercise independent judgment and discretion on significant matters. Think HR directors or the head of operations. The professional exemption covers jobs requiring advanced knowledge in a field of science or learning, typically acquired through prolonged specialized education. Your on-staff CPA, your in-house counsel, or your engineering team members. They likely fall here. The computer professional exemption applies to programmers, systems analysts, and software engineers. It's not your IT support staff who keep your computers running. This category has special salary minimums that can differ significantly from other categories, particularly in states like California. Outside sales is fairly straightforward. These employees make sales or obtain contracts away from your place of business. The key word is outside. Your sales team making calls from your office? Well, they don't qualify. Finally, highly compensated employees. Those are employees earning above a certain threshold. Currently, it's $107,432. That's at the federal level. Well, they may qualify for the exemption if they also regularly perform at least one duty of an exempt executive, administrative, or professional employee. But beware, some states, like California, don't recognize this category at all. Now, here's what trips up most business owners. In addition to the duties test, all exempt positions must also meet the salary basis test. At the federal level, that's currently $684 per week, but many states set higher thresholds. In California, it's twice the state minimum wage for a full-time employee. For a 40-hour work week in 2025, that's considerably higher than the federal minimum. So what happens if you get it wrong? Well, an employee misclassified as exempt who should be non-exempt is entitled to back overtime pay, potentially going back several years. Add in penalties, interest, and potential legal fees, and you're looking at a serious financial hit. So here's what I want you to do. First, review every position in your company. Look at what the employee actually does day to day, not just their job title or what you hope they'll grow into. Second, compare those duties against the exemption criteria for your state. Remember, state laws can be more stringent than federal laws. Third, make sure you're meeting the salary threshold for exempt employees if the position does qualify. And fourth, when in doubt, classify as non-exempt. And a bonus fifth step, document your classification decisions. Write down why you believe a position qualifies for a particular exemption. This documentation is going to be invaluable if your classification is ever questioned. I want to be clear about something. Neither you nor your employee gets to choose the classification. Your bookkeeper doesn't become exempt just because they prefer the stability of a salary. Your marketing coordinator doesn't become exempt just because you don't want to track their hours. The law determines the classification based on job duties and salary thresholds, period. And again, it's the job duties, not the person's experience. For instance, if your bookkeeper has a CPA license, but that was not required for the bookkeeping job, then that position should be non-exempt. Just because the person is overqualified doesn't change the status of that job. Now, the good news is that you can choose to treat an otherwise exempt employee as non-exempt. The Department of Labor doesn't mind if you pay overtime to someone who could be exempt. They just care that people who should get overtime do get overtime. But it doesn't work the other way around. You can't avoid overtime obligations by simply putting someone on salary if their position doesn't qualify for the exemption. If you're not sure about a position in your company, talk to your labor attorney. Yes, I know, another expense, but trust me, it's a lot cheaper than the alternative. An hour of attorney time now could save you tens of thousands in back wages and penalties later. Employee classification isn't the most exciting part of running a business, but getting it right is absolutely essential to protecting your company and treating your team fairly. Take the time to do it right, and you'll sleep better at night knowing you've got the compliance thing nailed. If you found this information helpful, please leave a review and tell a friend. Thanks for spending the time. Until next week, same time, same place.